Uh, hey everyone, once again, Raul Fernandez here, your friendly select board member and chair of the Small Business Development Committee. Welcoming you to our ninth virtual town hall meeting for Brookline businesses and nonprofit organizations impacted by COVID-19. I've been told by our economic development staff that because this is our ninth, you actually have punched your card and you get the 10th one free. So please feel free to join us again next week. We'll be back. Once again, we'll be here every Thursday morning as long as this is very helpful to you and we want to deliver important updates and answer your questions in real time. Today's virtual town hall will feature some of our usual suspects. Economic development staff will provide a few updates, and then we'll be joined again by Pat Maloney, Brookline's Director of Environmental Health. He'll join us around 9:30 for another round of Q&A, and I know there's still lots of questions. One of the things we're anxiously awaiting to hear from is from the governor's office, which has promised an update on Monday about potential guidelines for businesses that might be able to open even as early as potentially Monday. And really anxious to hear from Pat Maloney about our ability to conduct inspections and enforcement and things like that, and exactly what it is that they're going to be looking for as part of that. Of course, we need to also hear from the governor's office on that. So I'm going to turn it over right away to Kara Bruton to provide some updates of her own.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start off this morning with a specific call to action. Meredith is going to be talking later about the Shop Brookline storefront signage in just a minute. Once we start seeing those signs go up in our storefront businesses, we fully expect other businesses will come and ask you how to get a sign. So when that happens, and this is my call to action, when businesses ask you how to get a sign, please let them know two additional things. One is that they can get information about opportunities like this signage program directly by subscribing to the town's business newsflash email system. And two, that the town will be using this email system to release information in the coming weeks about the federally funded CDBG Community Development Block Grant, Small Business Assistance for businesses with low to moderate income business owners or businesses with a majority of low to moderate income employees. So to be very clear, one of the factors we're going to be looking at before releasing this federal funding at a local level to help our small businesses is that in each round, we're going to be double checking and making sure that we have a wide range of applications in hand that represent our whole business community. One indicator of whether we are adequately reaching our businesses fairly will be whether we receive inquiries or applications from businesses that we did not previously have an email contact for. So we have email contacts for hundreds of businesses, but we do not have an email contact for all 2,000 in the town. So we're starting to see an uptick in new email subscriptions to the Business News Flash, which is great. We know that part of this is due to our outreach to landlords and getting more emails. And we also know that one of the best ways we're seeing new emails from businesses is simply by word of mouth from someone that they know well. That could be a landlord, it could be a resident that's near their business, they're starting to reach out to each other. It could be the business that's next door to you. It could be a social network. So the Business News Flash is a system that works by individuals self-subscribing. So this means that we can't sign you up, you have to sign up yourself. So please help us by getting the word out about the Business News Flash emails to other businesses. Our last Newsflash email went out early Monday morning, so you could just search your email for the term Newsflash, see if you have it. If you do, great, you're already subscribed. If you don't see that email, that means you're not getting information from us directly. So please take a minute and sign up for yourself for the Business Newsflash emails. And I think Meredith is going to post that in the chat section of the link to that. Once you're on the email system and other businesses ask you how to sign up, it's really easy. You can just forward them any one of those emails because there's links in each of those emails about how to subscribe. So that's the end of my pitch for the Business News Flash, but please help us make sure that we're reaching all businesses, not just the ones that are more traditionally plugged into organizations. Secondly, we wanted to thank the 16 or so businesses that have already completed our COVID-19 impact poll. We launched this poll late last week. If you haven't already completed this poll and can spend 10 minutes to do so, we would very much appreciate that. The town is looking at sharpening our own budget, just as everybody else is. We're looking at sharpening our own budget needs over the next couple months. And so your feedback will be incredibly helpful in allocated municipal resources across all departments so that we can help the small business community. It also helps us advocate different topics at the state level. Every Friday, we're on a phone call with our state agencies. And so any information you can give us through the polls or even directly, we're updating the governor through those Friday weekly calls. So that's helpful also. So the polls starting tonight at 6 p.m. We'll be reporting the first kind of interim update to the select board regarding these results. So if you can, please complete this poll if you haven't already by 6 p.m. today. And I believe we're putting a link for that in our chat section as well. And finally, I'm not sure how many people on this call have already received funds from the Paycheck Protection Program, but I did want to let you briefly know that on our business resources page, there's headlines at the top right corner of the screen, and we try to keep the most recent 3 or 4 pieces of new information that's been released right there, easy to find. So just yesterday, we update this page very frequently, but yesterday afternoon, put a link to guidance that was updated just yesterday afternoon by the Small Business Administration. And this is going to be of interest to any of you that have received Paycheck Protection Program or PPP funds. I'm just going to read 2 of the Q&A from that link because we've been hearing these questions a lot recently, but you can also read it, the longer, more legal version on that link on our business resources page. So one of the more frequent questions is, will a borrower's PPP loan forgiveness amount be reduced if the borrower laid off an employee, offered to rehire that same employee, but the employee declined the offer? And I'm pleased to announce that the answer is no. As an exercise of the authority of the SBA and the Treasury, they intend to exclude laid-off employees whom the borrower offered to rehire from the loan forgiveness reduction calculation. The borrower does have to make a good faith written offer of rehire, and the employee's rejection of that offer must also be documented by the borrower, and then that will come off of the loan forgiveness reduction piece. So I think that's helpful guidance that was just issued in the last couple of days. That employees and employers should be aware that employees who reject offers of reemployment may forfeit eligibility for continued unemployment compensation as well. And I'm going to talk about that at the state level in just a minute. The other question that I thought was interesting and just came out yesterday is question number 46 on that long FAQ. And the question is, how will the SBA review borrowers required certification where they've certified that their loan request was necessary? And as of yesterday, the SBA clarified that in addition to self-certifying in good faith that the loan is necessary to support the ongoing operations, that the SBA and the Treasury have determined now and put it in writing as of yesterday that any borrower that received PPP loans of less than $2 million will be deemed to have made the required certification. So the other way that you're hearing about this probably in the news is that the SBA is going to be focusing the review of already granted loans and looking for enforcement or businesses. They're going to be cracking down on businesses that have loans greater than 2 million. So that's kind of a cutoff of if your loan is less than 2 million, you're kind of in the safe harbor category. That doesn't mean you wouldn't ever be reviewed, but it's assumed that you've made a good faith certification and that's it. If your loans are greater than 2 million, I don't think we have anybody on the call today that's in that category. We would just suggest that you speak with your financial partners, your CPA, your bank, to make sure you understand what you signed up for. Before I turn it over to Meredith, I wanted to let people know that we are working on a more detailed upcoming virtual town hall regarding human resource issues. In the meantime, I wanted to let everybody know today that the state, this past week, the state's unemployment office has published a guide for both employers and employees, and we're going to put links to that up in the Q&A. And that guidance goes more into what the steps employers and employees should take if employees are concerned about returning to the workplace too early, how the employers can best protect themselves, document that, and make sure that everybody's talking to the state unemployment office. It is detailed and complicated, but I'm glad that the state has those guides and have published them, and those are on our website as well. That's the end of my updates. And so I'm going to turn it over to Meredith to talk about the storefront signage program.
Thank you.
And I will say, just before you go, Meredith, we've got the Q&A open. So as you hear these updates from Kara and now from Meredith, please ask your questions. And then maybe after Meredith's comments, we'll get to those questions before we get to Pat Maloney.
Good morning. Okay, so all of the links that Kara referenced are now in the chat box as a resource. So yesterday, for the past couple of weeks at the virtual town hall, we've been talking about a coordinated storefront signage initiative that we've been working on in partnership with the business community. It was an idea from Lucia Berman Rossi from Tiny Hanger that was actually grew out of these virtual town halls. So as of yesterday, we have the signs in hand. They're ready for distribution. We also have a social media kit. We felt that it was important, given that a lot of businesses are focused on their online presence right now, that this campaign also have a virtual presence. We're working on how to get that social media kit available to everyone. The social media kit, by the way, includes a Zoom background that has hashtag Shop Brookline and has pictures of the 4 different posters that are included in the campaign. So just be aware of that. I tried to use it, but I don't have a green screen on my computer, but I'll work on that. So we already have 27 people who have requested signs, which is very exciting. I'm going to do my best to get those signs out so people can have them up in storefronts as soon as possible. I'll be out and about after this call and probably on Friday. Our distribution strategy, full disclosure, is, I would describe it as fluid at the moment. The signs, we worked closely with our a very talented designer, Annika Serene of the Small Business Development Committee, and talked a lot about what sort of materials, and we wanted to make sure that these signs were durable. And so, we just want to make sure that we're distributed and that the signs themselves are taken care of in the distribution process. So if you are interested in requesting a sign, haven't done so already, I'm going to pop a link to the Google form where you can request it directly. We're also encouraging people just to try to make this as integrated as a campaign as possible. The Brookline Chamber, as of 9 weeks ago, had started an open for business database of Brookline businesses. So we're asking that if you are participating in the sign program, it would also be great if you could email your information to the chamber so that you can be included in that open for business database. And I think that's it in terms of signs. When I'm done talking, I'll put the links in the chat box. A couple of other updates. We had a couple other meetings this week. The Small Business Development Committee reconvened on Tuesday, had a good productive discussion about the committee goals. We're going to resume those meetings on a regular basis. So we'll probably have some updates from the Small Business Development Committee, which has been hosting these virtual town hall meetings for the past 9 weeks. And there was also a Coolidge Corner Merchants Association meeting where a couple of really great questions came up, which hopefully Pat Maloney will be able to address later on in our conversation. But there was an inquiry about what's the status of the town's open streets. You've probably noticed, you've been driving around in our commercial areas, that there are a lot of orange traffic cones that have extended the sidewalk area so that people are able to social distance more effectively. So I checked in with our transportation administrator. The transportation board at their meeting earlier this week did indicate that the open streets is going to remain past May 18th, and that they're going to revisit that again at their meeting in June. So we'll probably continue to see that around until at least early June. And that program might change or expand depending on how the public health social distancing guidelines evolve over the next several weeks. The other question related to that The town put up delivery-only parking signs to support restaurants and businesses as they transition to this more delivery takeout operation. And the status of that is also pending. And I think the future of those signs will depend largely on what's included in the governor's reopening guidelines that we're going to see on Monday, as well as feedback from the business community. So it would be really helpful if businesses have found this to be beneficial, if you could let us know and we could get some feedback, because I think that will definitely be an important factor going forward. And in terms of that feedback, you can just email me or Kara, and I'll include our emails in the chat section after this. So those are all of my updates. Do we want to transition to Q&A? Great. Kara, do you want to kick off with the Q&A, and I'll just make sure I take care of those links?
Yeah, great. So I'm just going to audibly repeat Jen Mason's first comment here, which I think is really helpful. She was on an SBA call recently, and she learned that if you got the economic injury disaster loan grant, as long as you don't use it for the same thing, meaning like the same time frame of rent, then you're as long as you're not using the EIDL grant for the same thing as what you're using your Paycheck Protection Program loan for, then that won't get rolled into your loan forgiveness amount. And this was the first clear answer that she had heard. So thank you, Jen, for sharing that. It reminds me that there are many webinars that are happening where people can get direct answers. We've heard from a lot of businesses where they've been able to get their very specific question answered at webinars like this. And we are also updating weekly upcoming webinars that we think are going to be of most interest to the business community on our business resources page. So do look out for those. And if you see others that we don't have that you think people would be interested in, please let us know. James Carr is joining us this morning, local architect in town, also on the planning board, which is great. He's asking about businesses to emails, what's stopping us from looking up emails on the website. Absolutely nothing. The issue is a lot of businesses don't have websites, believe it or not, or might have outdated emails. And so that's one piece of it. We have had our Economic Development Advisory Board go through the basically our landlord database, which is pulled from the tax assessors and the state corporations database. And there have been a couple really good finds where landlords have given us, dozens of tenant emails at a time. In other cases, we hit a dead end. There are businesses that they may have a website, but they don't have a direct contact email. And also, there are 2,000 businesses in Brookline. And so we are trying to capture as many emails as we can. But it will help us if there are multiple networks of people getting the word out for people to self-subscribe emails. James' other question is why the town can't just email people directly without businesses self-subscribing. Part of that answer is beyond my head. It has to do with our IT department and the protocols that they set in place to make sure that as a municipal government, not just a private business, but a municipal government, that we are protected and there's enough firewalls in between different things that we do. But one of the more practical reasons that I've heard from IT of why we use a system that requires people to self-subscribe to email systems is simply because by doing that, there's a higher likelihood that when they get that email, it won't end up in their clutter or junk box. If we were just to do a blast to 500 emails at a time, many people's email filter will say, oh, that email's to 500 people. That's most likely an unsolicited business request, and it'll just go straight to your junk email. So there's a couple reasons for that. I don't know all the reasons, but that's just a couple. Let's see. Meredith, do you want to talk about this question with Jen Mason's asking if businesses want two different signs? For example, many businesses are doing both online orders as well as takeaway.
Great question. And I did see your note in your Google form reply, Jen, and inspired by that comment, I went back and I actually revised the Google form. So people who submit a request now will be able to give their first choice option and then their second choice option. Just for this first round, as we're distributing the signs, we want to make sure, we have limited number of signs available. So we want to make sure that everyone who wants one gets one. And we're also trying to maximize the number of businesses that can have them up in their storefronts, because we were looking to make a big positive visual impact in our commercial areas. So that said, in the event that we have extra signs, or if we're able to find another community partner who might be able to help us create more signs, we'd love to do a second round and make other signs available to people, because I know that, and this is something that the wonderful working group that we assembled to help develop this program, we grappled with, because there are a lot of variations in terms of how people are open, and there are businesses like yours that are in that takeout delivery category, as well as the online offerings category. So we're definitely aware of that. Thank you for calling that to our attention. And if we have additional signs available, I'll be circling back to let you know.
And Raul, I wonder if Raul wants to take the question about the Brookline Community Foundation, our coordination with them, and how we're helping individual business employees that are in need.
Right. Thank you. I've mentioned this before on these. The Brookline Community Foundation, the amount that's been raised so far is $1 million. Half has come from the town, and half has come from individual residents and other contributors. As James mentioned, some of the wealthier folks in town included as part of that, although from very small contributions as well. Differently than many of the funds people might be familiar with in their own communities, our safety net fund is actually available to any small business owner or employee of a small business in Brookline, regardless of whether or not they live in Brookline. So they can apply for those funds. The way to contact it's managed by the Brookline Center. The way to contact them is 617 now I forgot the number. Sorry, give me a second. I had it in my head. Meredith, can you get that number for us while I talk a little bit more about this? We'll get that number for you in just a second. I believe it's 277-8107, but let's get the right number first. You can contact them, and they'll actually give you a call right back. Ask you about your situation, and then figure out how they can help with those acute financial needs. I'll tell you this much: it is different than the kind of support that you're going to be able to get as a business owner for your business. This is about your individual support. So if there are business owners out there that are struggling to pay their own personal rent, not their commercial rent, but their personal rent, or pay their own personal utilities, that's a place where you can get support from the Safety Net Fund. Also, likewise, if there are employees that were working at your business and now are now out of work because of COVID, they can also apply to that fund as well. I'll also let you know that it is available to anyone regardless of documentation or immigration status. They can also call and get that too. So I see that Meredith's put the website in there for the Safety Net Fund, and then the phone number also is forthcoming. It's it is 617-277-8107. That's what I thought it was. And it's in there right now. So once again, 617-277-8107. Give a call if you do need support. As Kara mentioned earlier, there is some funding becoming available through CDBG, Community Development Block Grants through the town. And we'll be providing more information in the weeks to come about qualification for that grant funding and when it will become available.
Great. And then I'm just going to kind of add to that topic a couple other comments that Debbie Miller from the Chamber of Commerce has posted in the Q&A. So in addition to, individual assistance that Raul just talked about, or business assistance, which is still, we're still waiting for the feds to release that funding to the town, which is going to come in a couple of weeks for qualified businesses. James is asking about what about just the community providing direct support. And the best way that businesses can let the community know how the community can support them is to go to the Chamber of Commerce website, the Open for Business section. You can follow instructions on the website. And if you're not chamber members, you can also just email directly Debbie. Her email is debbie@brooklinechamber.com. And what businesses are posting is their business name, their website, their phone number, but also how best the community can support them. For some, that's going to be, for example, buying gift certificates. For others, it's going to be, ordering items online that they may be able to sell now, or, meals. There are also some creative things that some of our businesses are doing. For example, in Newton, I was seeing yesterday that businesses are kind of banding together and offering care packages so that a resident in the community could say, I'm going to send a care package to, someone that I know is living by themselves down the street. I just want to reach out to them, and they can support them and support the business community at the same way. So that's another just example of if businesses can post things like send a care package to someone you care about locally, you can post that on the Brookline Chamber website, and then the community knows how to support you. We are getting more and more interest from neighborhood associations to work together as a group in trying to support the businesses. They are definitely saying to us, we want to help our business community. We don't know how. What's the best way to do it? And so the more that businesses can directly answer that question on the chamber website, please know that we are getting calls daily from the community saying, how can we help? I'll share one very small story that I just found so heartwarming. A couple of weeks ago, there was a resident who said, I don't buy much stuff. I'm not a big consumer. I've lived in Brookline for 30 years. There's one restaurant that I always appreciate, but their website doesn't have an email. I'm not sure they're checking their mail because they're temporarily closed. I desperately want to help them to make sure they come back. I just don't know how. And he ended up calling the rabbi that he knows helps their business be certified as kosher. And just that's the kind of level that some of our residents, who you may not see in the commercial areas that frequently, but they care so deeply about their local businesses. And so they are asking how to help, and the best way to let people know how to help is through that chamber website.
I'll note that we're at 9:28. We do have Pat Maloney with us now, but we have a number of questions. Maybe we can do a lightning round through some of these questions.
Yeah, I want to actually just quickly, if Susan Silverberg could be maybe promoted to speak for a second. So Susan Silverberg is a firm that's locally here in Brookline. She's starting to work with business districts in New England to do virtual social distance placemaking, and she's offering pro bono services for business associations about how to do this. And so, Susan, do you want to just quickly talk about that?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I just, we're just beginning to work with a couple of other places around thinking about online, whether it's treasure hunts or things that can be done in a socially isolating way, business highlights, getting people to really reconnect with businesses and to think about kind of being together, even if they're apart. And so I think it would be really fun to think about how to do that in Coolidge Corner. And, particularly, David, I'm thinking you've got the kind of creative, fun mind around that, and other merchants as well. So starting perhaps with some online activities or kind of virtual things, and then transitioning to other things, whether it be public art or kind of temporary things, just to get people aware and clued in and feeling like they're connected, and hopefully then going to business websites, seeing how they can help, how they can buy gift certificates or online. So that's it. I don't know how we would go about this other than just starting talking with our firm.
Kathy?
Well, if I can jump in really quick, Susan, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kathy Bisbee, the Executive Director of Brookline Interactive Group, and I'm in touch with 1,200 community media public access, government access television stations across the country, and there's 200 of them in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So as you're creating content, let's think about how we might be able to each do promotional videos about our communities and how people can access us safely, and then think about how we can collectively share that information with our neighbors so that folks know if you're coming to Brookline from Somerville, if you're coming to Brookline from JP, how can you find us and what's open, and we'd love to be a part of that.
That's great. And that's an area I don't really know a lot about in terms of the TV. So if we could have another call and you can clue me in, that's
absolutely. And all of us have very large social media presences as well. So we definitely could do the cable, but all of that content can also be online.
Thanks.
Great. The other questions here, I'm going to try to type in answer, and also we can follow up directly with Jen and James. So I think we can move on, at least for now, we can move on to Pat.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Pat.
We had a very busy morning today at the health department. We started our first run on doing antibody testing for essential service employees in the town. So it's basically a test run for us to see what kind of traffic flow we need, what type of facility setup we need. So so far this morning, everything's running very smooth. And but I had to come over here because this is very important. I know from previous presentations, I've received an awful number of emails. I've had contact when I've been out and about, and everything's been very positive. So what you guys are doing here is great. Been getting a lot of compliments on emails. I was in a food facility takeout yesterday, and that operator gave compliments of what you guys are doing. So this is great. It's a great resource. What we're doing is, from the previous talks, basically I've been going down things that establishments should be looking for and acquiring. So we're putting that into like a checklist. So Meredith has been great to assist me with that. So we have something that once we just fine tune it a little bit, we'll be sharing with everyone, because that's the biggest email I've been getting. Pat, could you send me that, what you've been talking about? So you'll get it. So it's clear that that was a necessary resource people want. In addition, what I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to put together a packet for you for all establishments and businesses to kind of walk you through this. We're also making a form that you could fill out on the elements that I'm going to be talking about related to the mandatory safety standards for workplaces and businesses. So I just found in my many years of working in public health, when you can put together a guide for people where they fill in what's applicable to them, it gets you there closer to our goal. In addition, it's clear signage is important. And so I have staff working on that behind the scenes, and we're looking at other options for additional signage. So signage is going to be important, and we'll have information saying that it is required by the health department, because that's important, that people understand these are not just arbitrary things that we're trying to inconvenience people. These are things that are part of the state protocol that trickle down to every city and town in the Commonwealth that has to be followed. So we're hoping that helps everyone. So a Monday is going to be a very big day. We're all awaiting. I've been having meetings with my colleagues across the state in public health, and everyone is waiting for, we want to hear what is going to be in the various phases, because all of our businesses, everything we regulate, they want to know, do we get to go ahead on Monday? What's going to happen? And the state has been very tight-lipped on that. They haven't been divulging anything. And we know people to call too, and we can't get it out of them. So we're all at the mercy of what the governor will be announcing. But what he did announce, and what the committee that's been working on reopening is, they broke it down. If you recall in previous presentations, I said across the country, we've been monitoring what's going on, and states have been going with either a 3 to a 5-phase approach to reopening. And Massachusetts went to, right in the middle, a 4-phase approach. So I'm just going to review that, give you what the elements are, and then talk about the mandatory safety standards that need to be incorporated as part of this process. Understand, we're going to, this will be put in a packet and be given to everyone, but it's something that, depending on what your business falls into the particular phase that is that the state is advising, you will have a variable of when you'll be doing certain things. So it's a 4-phase approach, and right now we're, as you know, we're in the emergency conditions where essential services have been approved to open with conditions. So businesses, some businesses kind of warmed up to that. Many businesses have been customers in some of those essential facilities, like shopping and what have you. So you kind of get an idea of what's going on out there, and that's going to carry over to the various other businesses. So first will be phase 1, and this is where limited industries will be allowed to resume operations with, and they mentioned severe restrictions. So what is that, Pat? I don't know yet, but I'd have to say it's similar to what we're doing with essential services. Those are pretty extreme protocols that establishments are following. And it's face coverings, social distancing, barriers, sanitizing, things of that nature. And when I talk about the mandatory standards, it's all incorporated into that. So you'll be seeing a theme here. So what are those businesses going to be on phase 1? I don't know. That's the big question. We as the health department, we license children's camps and swimming pools and all of the pools and condominiums, and they're all, just calling us constantly. When will we be allowed to open? It's going to be part of this phase and approach. So we'll see. We'll also know Monday. After phase 1, and a phase will change when the state, looking at the data, following the public health information, looking at testing results, looking at what's going on in the hospitals, how many people are being admitted, how many people are being discharged, is the trend going down, where we're more comfortable that we could start lightening up restrictions for the public. And when those numbers fall into place, then we'll go into phase 2. So it's going to be science-driven, data-driven, so that the public health department will be advising the governor's office, yes, it's good that we could go to stage 2. And they're looking at all the communities. We're keeping track of our data, as the select board knows. Dr. Jett's been informing everyone on a weekly basis and a daily basis of what's out there. So when we find that things are getting better and the trend goes down, and it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, then we go to phase 2. And phase 2 will list additional industries that can now be open, and they will be allowed to resume. They will have certain restrictions and also capacity limits. So I found it interesting that in their presentation, they put capacity limits at the phase 2. So that's probably looking at larger establishments. Similar to what we've done with grocery stores. When we first started, there was no capacity limit with grocery stores, and we found we had a problem. There was overcrowding in the grocery stores. So right away, the state came down and said we have to limit the capacities to 40% of what they're allowed. So you're going to be seeing something similar in that, in this phase-in approach. Some businesses may be a little larger, and they'll have to limit what capacity they will allow inside their establishment. And again, looking at the statistics, looking at what's going on in the hospitals, looking at the rate of positives and everything going down, then we'll be notified that we could go to stage 3. And we'll see who's going to be in that stage 3. And then they will be allowed to open. These will be additional industries. They will resume operations. And they will also do this with appropriate guidance. And the guidance is what I'll be talking about in the safety standards that we'll be looking for. And then finally, when we go to phase 4, that's when we're going back, as the governor has referred to it, as the new normal. What that will be, I don't know. I mean, is the new normal where people will still be wearing face coverings or not? I'm not sure. We'll get a read of that. But that's when things are really going in the best direction that we want to see. And basically, everything would be open with whatever protocols public health and the state deems appropriate to keep people safe, keep employees safe. And all of this is designed to keep the public safe, employees safe, customers safe. So what we're going to be going over. Okay, so then part of this, all businesses will have to do, put together a safety standards workplace plan. And that is going to be it's going to address 4 elements. And they're elements that we've been talking about all along. So you'll find that you guys have been warmed up to this. And it shouldn't be that foreign. And you've also been seeing it implemented out there in our businesses, as I said. So a safety plan needs to be put together for all establishments. And as I said, we're going to put together a packet. So you have a form and you could fill out, and it'll say your establishment. And for requirement 1, tell you what's required. And then you will say, and in my establishment, I am doing the following. So social distancing is element 1 that the plan should have. And all persons, including employees, customers, vendors, should remain at least 6 feet apart to the greatest extent as possible. So again, it's that social distancing. When your business opens, you have to incorporate that for your employees, for your customers, and your vendors. So they need to understand that, because you'll be having deliveries and things coming in. So they need to follow those protocols. In addition, you need to spell out those protocols to ensure employees can practice adequate social distancing. So they need to know. So put it in writing so there's no misunderstanding or discrepancy that staff need to understand. They're going to be behind the counter. This is how they're going to do a service to an individual. So we don't have any oversight on that issue. Next is provide signage. So we're going to be giving you some signage for the front doors saying all customers must wear face coverings by order of the health department. And economic development, I know, has been making some fantastic signs for you. And then there may be some signs that are particular that you need to make just for your own business. So signage is important, and I find I've been a firm believer of this. We've implemented many laws over the years, access to service animals and smoking laws, and always having that front door posted. And you point, you say, see, it's posted on the front. You need to comply with this. It's part of the new regulations. That helps you with enforcement and getting compliance so that people cooperate. A next part of social distancing is requiring face coverings and for all of employees. So that's something that I've been talking about. Start looking for that, start buying that, because you're going to need that for your staff. Some establishments I'm hearing are requiring it for their customers also. But at this point, because it's not first, Brookline was the first to require the face coverings, but now that it's required throughout the state, we're seeing pretty good compliance, and people are coming across with the face coverings. The one thing we've been discovering, we had a day where we set up 3 tables throughout the town in our high commercial areas. And when we saw individuals without face coverings, we'd approach them and offer them a face covering. And we came across individuals that have medical conditions. And that was interesting to talk to them and hear. There were some very distressed individuals who were being yelled at, and you're not wearing a face covering, and they would say, and you could see the sincerity in their talk, I have a medical issue. I can't wear that. Asthma and breathing restrictions. So that's something to be aware of. And in the signage, we're incorporating that so people are aware of it. One thing I'm looking at to make sure this will be compliant are persons with medical issues because of breathing restrictions. I believe the plastic face covering that you've seen out there may be an acceptable alternative. And when we confirm that, we're going to put that also in our packet to say this is, and we'll show an example of what it looks like. So that may assist people who have that breathing restriction. They could still have a face covering and go about their business. Persons don't have to have a document or something to say, here's my issue, why I'm not wearing it. They just have to verbally tell you that they have a medical issue and they can't wear that. So that's social distancing. That's part one of what you should be following. Next is hygiene protocols. And again, on the form that we're going to be assisting you with, giving you that you could use to help you keep track and stay on with this protocol. So hygiene protocols, and this is the number one thing that you've been hearing again and again from the health department and CDC and on the media, on TV, properly washing your hands, having facilities that you can wash your hands. So employees will, you'll have to make sure your sinks are equipped, you have hot water, soap, towels. You have to have something in the workplace, and all workplaces have that for their employees, even small businesses, because it's an OSHA requirement, but we need to make sure they're up and running and equipped. So that's part of what a business needs to have. In addition, you need to ensure that there's frequent washing of employees and have adequate supplies. What is frequent? Well, it depends on the business. Grocery stores have more frequency than other low activity stores. Some businesses, like our food establishments, they've been putting timers into their certain kitchens where every 45 minutes to an hour, a ding goes off and the food handlers have to go wash their hands. That's a new quality control thing that food facilities have been doing. But in your protocols, depending on your business, I would, establish something so that, when people come in the morning and maybe midday and at the end of the day, I'd say would be for a very basic business that people are washing their hands. And, depending on what type of activity you do when they interact with customers, go wash your hands again. Maybe a protocol, depends on what your business is about. And also having adequate supplies, the paper towels, the soap, things of that nature. Also sanitizer, the hand sanitizers. And provide regular sanitation at high touch areas, such as workstations, equipment, screens, doorknobs throughout. I don't have my display products with me today because I had to run over to the EOC for this presentation. But you saw in the past the spray bottles, huge for assisting with doing the high touch surfaces. The containers with the sanitizer wipes in it. So you need to establish a protocol, whether it's every hour or more than that, to go through the high touch surfaces and wipe them down with a disinfectant sanitizer, something that kills the germs and viruses we're concerned about. So first was social distancing, second was hygiene protocols. So we have a little theme here, as you can see. We're thinking about processes that we protect people. The next one, the third element, is staffing and operations. And you need to provide training to employees regarding social distancing and hygiene protocols. So they need to understand what you're doing and what the expectation is. So as part of this, you will be educating your staff, saying, all right, our protocol will be, when you come in, when at the midday and at the end of the day, for example, that's when you could be washing your hands. Every hour, we're going to be touching, wiping down all the high touch surfaces. Again, it depends on what type of business you have and what type of frequency of customers you have. So it's a variable, but you need to have some game plan to address that. And when we give our guidance documents, we'll try to give you examples as best we can, but you're going to have to know your business a little bit. We don't know everybody's operational business. It'll be much different for a hair salon to a jewelry store. Two different worlds. Hair salons, high level of hygiene, high level of sanitation protocols, and as opposed to a jewelry store that has very limited contact until they show particular products and what have you. Employees who are displaying signs or symptoms of COVID-19 symptoms, they can't report to work. So you should put as part of your staff protocols and we'll have them in the packet of what people, if they have these symptoms, they should not be there. If they've been exposed to somebody, they should not be there. If they have the temperature, they should not be there. So we'll have that for you. And that's something that every day you'll be checking your staff and asking them about as they come in. And establish a plan for employees who get ill. This is something I need to still gather more information on. We're even doing this for the town because we're going to be reopening all town buildings. But we need to establish plans so that if somebody gets ill, this is what you do and when you can come back to work. So that will give you guidance that we have from the CDC so you understand that, and you need to educate your staff about, okay, here's the protocol that we need to follow for that. Our food establishments have been doing this for years. That has been part of our food safety protocols. They all have to have if somebody gets ill and we have a list of communicable diseases that they have to report immediately. And then there's steps that they have to do before they can come back into the food system.
Just keeping an eye on the time. I don't know how much more you have, but we have a few questions I want to make sure we can get to as well.
We got one more element and then we're done. The fourth element that you need to address is cleaning and disinfection, and have protocols for doing that, have the adequate chemicals to be doing that, and be doing it at the appropriate frequencies. So it's kind of repeating myself here, but that's the last one. So all those 4 elements, you'll be getting a form in a packet that you can use. It's to help you get through this and meet the requirements of the state. And with that, I'll stop.
Well, we're going to keep going because we've got some questions for you, actually.
All right.
I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to pull David Lashinsky in a second, actually, for a good question he asked earlier before we got started. But there's a question here from an anonymous attendee. Local pharmacists are not wearing masks, and I'm seeing it worry customers, including myself. Can you talk to us a little bit about what inspections look like? Are you doing those randomly? What will that look like maybe in the weeks to come as more businesses open?
So let me talk about what we're doing now. We're doing spot checks and we're responding to complaints. So if that person could tell us what pharmacy it is, we want to know. I have to say, when I was doing a spot check with Health Commissioner Jett, everybody was compliant except for the head pharmacist. And I had to remind that individual twice. And I told them a third time, you're going to be fined and we'll be reporting it to the pharmacy board. And they got the message. So this is why we're out there. Spot checks are important because some people forget. They don't think we'll be out there. We will be out there. So for existing establishments and for our essential facilities, I have inspectional staff going in. I have them going in, I call it undercover, where they're not wearing their health department jacket and garb and not with a clipboard, and going in as if they were a customer to see what's going on. And then afterwards, they advise the manager that what they did see. And at this point, we're seeing very good compliance. It's been tremendous. I think a game changer is when the state also implemented the face coverings. That was the best. But there are lapses, and that's why we're out there as the inspectional service health department. We're making sure. So if that person could please note the establishment, and I'll get somebody out there to check that out.
Great. David, you had a good and I'm sure very quick question about how you should be recording things like temperatures. Can you unmute and ask that question?
Yeah, so the just question is, as a business owner, do I need to start keeping a log of all my employees and have they passed the different safety checks that would allow them to work?
Yes, that's going to be part of the safety standards protocol. So standard protocol will be staff comes in the morning, you take a temperature and you ask them the 4 questions. And when they say, yep, we're all fine, you just check and they're all set to work. I've pushed the recommendation to get those touchless little gun thermometers. They immediately work. I've been to 2 establishments and they're pleased with them. You don't have to record the temperature, just that you did that. So, and that should be logged in and recorded so that if we come in or if the state comes in, and the state is going out to some of our establishments, they will look for that. They will say, can you show me demonstrate to me how you're checking your staff for these questions and temperatures. We don't want people to come in and say, oh, I did my temperature at home, because we've run into issues. We've had, as you probably heard across the state, some facilities had to be closed because staff were showing up ill, and then it causes the whole establishment to be closed. So that's your due diligence, screening your staff as they come in every day. Maintain a log of that.
Are they also logging if an employee had a temperature that was too high? Are they logging that as well, or?
Yeah, then they sent that person home, and they should instruct. Part of the protocol that you'll be seeing that we send, it says then you need to instruct them to go see a doctor and make sure that they get checked.
You know, Pat, just as a follow-up to that, I've been reading some reports that said you could be potentially contagious for 1 to 2 days before you even begin to show a fever, if in fact you're showing a fever. Is there going to be a requirement to back report that says, oh, I now need to start tracing contacts from 2 days ago?
Yeah. So that's what goes on with our epidemiologists. They inquire and they have that window of when they would say, okay, you showed symptoms on this date, and they may go back a few days with where contacts were made. And you may be getting a call from the epidemiologist saying, we have somebody that when they were there, they were contagious, and you may have to restrict people. That's been one of the biggest challenges for our essential businesses right now. That scenario plays out and one person becomes sick, but 2 others were in close contact with them, and they also have to be out. That's why it's important to keep your social distancing as best you can, because as workers, because then you're keeping the social distance and you're not being next to somebody who's potentially positive. And this is why testing is a big deal, where they're looking, how can we do more testing so you don't have that scenario that you just described also.
Pat, I've got a couple more questions. It's going to take us just a little past 10 o'clock, folks.
No problem.
We're going to get these questions answered, and maybe we can do brief answers. I'll also note there's a couple of questions that came in regarding, really directed toward the planning board, and that maybe those questions should be directed there. But the questions for Pat are, 1, if you have a customer that claims they can't wear a mask, and you have high-risk employees, can you restrict them from coming in as long as you still serve them respectfully from outside?
Well, maybe. I'll have to think about that. And I see Caitlin is on. It's similar to what we do with persons with disabilities. You need to look at accommodations for individuals, right? I see, yep, she's shaking her head. So it sounds like you're making an accommodation for somebody. As long as that person can get that particular service, I think that's meeting the intent. So when somebody puts together their plan and if they want to describe what that alternative would be, we could look at that. Understand, we're not going to be reviewing everybody's plan. The only way we're going to be looking at the plans is when we do spot checks, because we don't have the resources. There's no way we're going to be getting out to everybody right away. So you're going to be on your own, And then when we stop in and we look at it, we may have a tweak here or there. Caitlin, do you think that sounds reasonable if somebody says I have a medical issue and they accommodate them?
I do. I think that in those instances, we want to kind of look at the ADA and use that as a guideline. So yes, as long as they're able to be accommodated respectfully, then I think that that should be fine.
Excellent
So
question.
I do have actually one point about this, which, because we've had some discussions around it. Most of all the small businesses are private enterprises. The properties are private properties. So if we have a sign that says, you're welcome to come in, we'd love to have you come in with a mask. Now, they say, sorry, we can't, we can make that decision, let them in or not. But my understanding is we have the right to refuse service to anyone as a private entity. We're not bound to accept everyone coming into our operations, especially if we feel it's going to put our employees or other customers at undue risk.
I just want to say one quick thing. If it is about a disability and you are allowing public into your store, you have to serve that person in one way or another. If they're just being a jerk about not wearing a mask and they don't say, I have a medical issue or a disability and I cannot wear it, then that's up to your discretion. But if they tell you
Yes.
that they have a reason medically that they can't wear it, since you serve the public, you would need to accommodate that.
I completely understand that. And yes, that would be my feeling as well. I don't want to wind up with a situation that I've heard in other places where folks have come back and shot people because they weren't allowed into a store without a mask. It's like, but at the same time, if you're not having a mask, you don't have a mask, you're not welcome.
And it says by order of the Board of Health.
And I just want to say, that it's important that I've seen way too many videos from around the country of people literally getting into fights, physical fights, police wrestling folks to the ground because they weren't wearing a mask properly. I don't want to see that in our community. And that in each of these engagements, when something like this happens, we need to be calm, be measured in our response, talk calmly, take the time to talk to people about why this is important, make sure if there is a medical issue that is addressed, and just really be as calm as possible about this because there are things far worse that could happen as a result of these altercations if they come. So let's just remember also that there are folks that I think I said this last time, that are coming to our community that haven't gotten all the messaging around what Brookline's been doing here. They'll be coming to shop and spend money and those kinds of things. And so we need to have a little patience, especially in these first couple weeks as businesses open up, as the guidance comes out. I just want to make sure that just from a tone perspective that we're calm about this. Pat?
And if I could suggest this, I think that would be an excellent future webinar where you have somebody who goes through, I know I've done it where I've attended, how to deal with difficult people, how to diffuse situations. I think that would be an excellent webinar on, how to tactfully approach somebody with something like this and do scenarios. It's powerful when you see it, listen to it, and it's empowered me when I've had to deal with some of those situations. So I see you're taking notes there, so that'd be good. There's very good trainers out there in that regard.
Can I jump in with a question? Sorry. I thought a really good question came up at yesterday's CCMA meeting where the fire chief was on, who I think is the chief of the town's emergency operations as well. And there was a question about, do we think that plexiglass barriers would be required? And his response was he didn't think they would be required, but from a consumer perspective, he felt that consumers would probably expect that those types of plexiglass barriers would be a part of their shopping experiences going forward. What do you think about that, Pat?
Yeah, I think they're going to be required. I think
required. Okay.
And on the early stages, they're going to be required. And the big question is, where do I get them? How do I find them? The best answer, and I've told this to many establishments, go to ones that are out there, ask them where they got it, because people have done very innovative approaches to comply with this. I've really been impressed with the innovation. So there are companies that sell it. There are local handy persons who have adjusted their work, and they do this for individuals. But go to a place and ask them, one of your neighbors that have it already.
Yes, and Kathy Bisbee in the comments, and we should just give the Makery in Coolidge Corner a shout out. They've been developing these, and I think Olive Connection just got a plexiglass barrier from the Makery. So that's a great resource right in Coolidge Corner. And we do have information about that if you want to request one on our resources page.
I do remember reading a Brookline tab or patch article about a young man named Ranch Kimball that was also making them for businesses as well. So so maybe look that up as well. We've got, Pat, our letter carriers within our purview. Jill says that she's seen many letter carriers without masks. What can be done? Are we able to enforce?
The short answer is they're federal. We've had a couple of complaints about our post office. And when I've had my staff go out and deal with it, I remind them that we don't have jurisdiction over federal facilities or employees, but there is something written in federal law that they have to meet the intent of any local rules or standards if they can, but we can't fine them or do anything. So we've been in communication with the postmaster for Brookline. If you're seeing that I haven't heard that yet, but I'll have our staff communicate with the postmaster, reminding them that they have to have this when they're out and about in Brookline. Yes, so that's a requirement.
Right. Thank you, Pat. And maybe a couple quick questions we've got James here. One about signage and or use electronic boards to list requirements on businesses for PPE, et cetera. I think Pat has already mentioned that the town is going to be putting together signage that will be put up at business by order of the health department and listing what's required of customers. Certainly communication will happen with businesses as Pat's been talking about in terms of what's required for them. And that this would help eliminate anxiety and arguments. Totally agree about that. And then the other one was about parking v. pedestrians with social distancing. We'll want to look at restricting parking in commercial areas to allow pedestrians to use parking lanes. We've actually already done that in certain areas. Can we consider restricting use of parking lanes to elderly, disabled, pick up, drop off? I think that's a conversation we need to have with our transportation administrator about that, but we can take that to Todd. Todd Corain, our transportation administrator. Last question just came in, hot off the presses, for the Golden Chickpea Center. When will the package of 3-step safety standards be available to businesses?
Yeah, we're working on it now. I'm hoping that on Monday I'm going to have it, and it'll be part of that unveiling. So this is a priority for us. So we're working hard behind the scenes to have that ready. So I already have a draft of that form that you can use, and we're just tweaking it. So hopefully we'll be there by Monday or that week for sure. So we'll get it to you.
Great. Well, that's all the questions we have. Meredith, Kara, anything before we go? Feeling good? Thanks, everybody. We'll be back. We will all be waiting with bated breath for Monday to come and for the guidelines to come out from the governor's office. And we'll be back here on Thursday to talk about everything we've heard then and what our approach is going to be to meeting those guidelines. So please join us again next Thursday at 9 o'clock. We'll be here. Pat and Kathy from BIG, thank you so much for being with us once again, and to all our Small Business Development Committee members, thank you to you too.
Good luck, everyone.